Hello. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. This is Benny P on the mic, and this video is my thoughts on a YouTube video I saw about the Council of Nicaea. For context, I'll link the video in the description down below. This is my first video on the channel, so here goes. Now before I start, I want you to understand this is in part a criticism of his video and in part a personal perspective of the events that occurred. Even if you agree with me or not, I encourage you to leave a comment. However, I'm going to ask you to be respectful. Even though I disagree with some of the creator's vantage points, I completely respect his right to believe what he believes and create content, and I wish for you to respect my right to do so as well. Now on to how I feel about this video. I understand the purpose of this video was that he did not like the misconception on why the council was called, and how that is turned into the narrative that some people use as a point of contention in religious arguments. He's accurate in clarifying that the council was not called to decide on which gospels were canon, but to decide and declare Christ's divinity. The thing I would like to point out is that although he did an adequate job of minimizing the significance of having to call the council in the first place, I think it should be looked at further. Why would you call a council to declare that Jesus is a god and snuff out people with ulterior beliefs if there was a universal understanding of his divine nature? Jesus had been dead, or ascended to heaven, depending on what you believe, for almost 300 years. You'd think that the Gospels would have explicitly described Jesus being of the same substance as the Father, or the debate was hammered out with a universal understanding by then that the church could build off of. I think this debate ended up needing to be resolved because for the first time in its history, Christianity was chosen by the emperor to be the dominant religion in the region. But Constantine wanted a unified doctrine from the priests so he could control it. And among these priests stood Arius, the example of how easy religious interpretation can create division. And state religions are streamlined by the state, right? In my mind, this was a political move to declare homoousios and to exile Arius. In an attempt to gloss over this situation that would make him look weak in his video, the creator minimized Arius, labeling him a heretic. Well, that's an ancient tactic that's never been used before. Jeebus. Attempts were made throughout history to label Akhenaten, Joan of Arc, Charles Darwin, Rashad Manji, and Christopher Hitchens as heretics to minimize their radical, dangerous beliefs by the religious establishment at the time. Like many religious people with skin in the game and something at stake, it's easier to label someone than it is to respect their beliefs. But no, there doesn't seem to be an expiry date to more people being suppressed, exiled, and killed because my religion's dad can kick your religion's dad. The ironic thing about the priests working towards exiling Arius is that some of them were being persecuted by polytheistic Romans 30 years prior. Makes me curious as to know what things that they were called by the pagans. Although I'm sure the creator of the video does not wish harm to come to anyone, his vantage point can influence people in moving to a more convicted position that can border on, at the very least, verbally abusive. I did not take a look at the comments section of his video, but I'm sure that there are some interesting exchanges of ideas there. The other thing I'd like to focus on is that Constantine was not the champion of Christianity many people believe him to be. He was more of a manipulator of any given region's religion. When Constantine conquered Rome, he understood the religious dynamic of the city. The city had temples dedicated to many gods, all seeking favor from their new emperor. If he enforced a new monotheistic religion popular with mostly the poor and the military at the time, he would have never been able to control Rome. To endear himself to the city, he had an arch built just outside the Colosseum dedicated to his victory at Milvian Bridge. And shockingly, the arch has no Christian symbolism or depictions, only of Greco-Roman gods. When he left Rome and built a new capital under his direction, his purpose was to have one empire with one emperor and one god. In part, Constantinople was built to be controlled more easily, but also it was easier to defend compared to Rome and along multiple trade routes as well. Those decisions helped the city last officially for 1,129 years. Another point I'd like to make, before Constantine's death, he had a change of heart on how he handled Arius and his followers. He invited Arius back to Constantinople to reinstate him, but unfortunately he died before he was able to get back to the city. On Constantine's deathbed, he was baptized by a follower of Arius, Eusebius of Nicaea. But remember, the Eastern Orthodox Church elevated Constantine to a saint. I have no problem saying he was a great figure in the history of Europe. However, I think it's important to remember he was a flawed human just like everyone else. I made this video because I agree with the creator of the video I'm criticizing. I feel the narrative needs to change. However, I also feel that we need to have a less biased approach when looking at history, so no matter what your religious views are, we can look at the events from a more objective perspective. This is Benny P on the mic.